Okay, so this is a long-awaited video of me reinstalling my home server and setting up KVM passthrough. How to do it on an AMD Ryzen system because there are some issues, and I want to make a video because I personally have to research it every time I do it, and I really should have wrote it down. So this is a guide for myself and others who may have this problem that need what's called the ACS patch. So first things first is I'm going to use Fedora Server 32, the latest version of Fedora. This is me downloading the ISO here and burning it with Balena Etcher to a flash drive. I'm going to quickly talk about, while this is downloading and setting up, why we are using Fedora. There are other options out there. However, the biggest one is there's a repo, a copper repo, that is super easy for me to set up and install the ACH patch kernel without having to compile it myself. Granted, it's not difficult. I'd just rather not have to deal with that and spend CPU cycles on it when there's somebody using the copper build service that builds the copper that builds the ACH patch in the copper repo that we can just add to a Fedora system that makes it super easy and super streamlined. So as I go through this install here, I'm just using the defaults, setting it up. As you can see, we're doing a 10x lapse here because it's going to take a few minutes. One of the other reasons I use Fedora is in my day job. I run Red Hat Linux and manage several hundred servers of RHEL. I really enjoy Red Hat. It's just a preference. You can use any distribution that you want. Fedora I like because it's kind of got that open source feel with the, well, I mean, they're all open source, but there's a lot of non-free stuff in Fedora, and it just the easier. So here you see I'm getting the IP address since the system is finally installed. Now we're going to jump over to my terminal. So first we're going to go ahead and do the standard thing. We're going to check for updates because right after a fresh install, you never know how many updates you're going to have that you need to take care of. As you see here, hangs for a minute because there's just definitely a lot of packages that needs to find. Having a bunch of packages, make sure everything's up to date. This is the first thing you want to do before we proceed with anything, even when you're setting up a server for the first time. Make sure you always have all your packages updated first, because it can cause you some problems later on in the installation process of whatever you're trying to do. Okay, so now we're rebooting. Make sure the system comes up. Give it a minute to boot here. Okay. Yes, I know I have an ACS motherboard. Alright, and there we see 32. Okay, and machine's coming up. Giving it just a moment here. Really should have fast forwarded this section too. Alright, so now we see the system booting, and we're back to a login terminal. So now we're going to jump back and SSH back in. So now we SSH back in, put in our password. Of course, getting the offending stuff because I've reinstalled the server. I'll fix that later. So here is the repo, and I'm going to put all this stuff in the description. So we're enabling the copper repo by JLay kernel ACH patch. So that's the first thing we need to do. We grab that, we say yes. Now we need to install this kernel because we need to boot with the ACH kernel and not the standard kernel. So that part is a little more complicated. So we just update the kernel. It's going to complain here because the kernel is already up to date and the JLA one is actually a couple versions behind. This happens sometimes. I'm going to show you how to fix that as well, so you don't have to worry about this breaking in the future with the newer mainline one breaking your slightly behind one. So first things first is we're going to go ahead and take care of that. So come in here to your Fedora one, and we're going to add a section called it's exclude. I thought it was blacklist, but it's actually exclude. So I'm going to exclude equals kernel asterisk. So anything with kernel in its name, we do not want it to do. I'm just going to check in here. So nothing more in the Fedora repo. I'm going to do this for each of the main repos. So the updates and the modular, same thing, exclude equals kernel asterisk. And again, one more for the updates. I think I also do it for testing as well. And just to explain again, what we're doing here right now is this will block these repos from when an actual kernel from Fedora comes out that hasn't and not from the cover repo. Sometimes the cover repo is a little behind because it's the auto build service. It waits in queue for its turn. It can break your virtual machines if you get the kernel from the mainline that doesn't have the patch in it. So what we just did there is we blocked whenever you do yum update from grabbing the latest. And as you see, it still doesn't get there because we still have the newer version already from the original repos. So what I'm doing now is I'm specifying that I want to install his version, the ACH patch version, which you see there. So now it's asking me to approve that I want to use this cover repo. I say yes, and now it's going to install this kernel. And as soon as it installs this kernel, we'll reboot the system. It's going to run our script here because it's got to follow everything. All right, so there you go. It's installed. And then now to reboot. So now we need to update grub. Now in grub, we need to set the parameters for the IO MMU groups and stuff to work. And we need to set the ACH patch override tools. It might be slightly different for your system. Again, links will be in the description for looking for the specific PCIe override functions with the ACH patch. So first thing we want to do is turn on IMMU, so setting it to 1. If we have an AMD processor, which honestly, that's what this video is about, with the ACH patch, AMD underscore IOMMU equals on PCIe underscore ACS override. And we need to go ahead and set, these are the two for me. So I set downstream and multifunction. These are the two that work for me. Some people need to add an extra one specifically for each one, and they're going to also add no DRAM, and that'll help with like the random generation stuff for virtual machines. Not 100% sure exactly what that does off the top of my head right now, but I know putting that in there has increased performance for me. So we're going to right quit, save. Second thing we need to do is make sure that we are passing through the correct, we need to get the IDs for the VFI override of the certain stuff. So I'm going to pass it through my NVIDIA card. So I need to grab these two IDs here, the 10D1F82, and then a graphics card also has HDMI sound. So we need to grab the sound piece too, which is right there, 10FA. And then we're going to pop this into a mod override file. A mod probe override. So we're going to do sudo vi etc modprobe.d/vfio.conf. And then we're going to show the options, VFIO PCI, the IDs, the two from my graphics card for the graphics and the sound. That's all I need to do here. So at this point, I'm just going to also take a moment to make sure we first we need to make sure the internet RD has the VFOI drivers loaded. Mine are already loaded. As you see, kernel drivers are already loaded. Because I've already done this. This is a go back and fix later because I lost part of the video footage, so this is me going back. But I'm going to show you how to add the drivers. So we're going to just do sudo drcut add drivers. We want to pass through these three drivers: VFIO, VFIO PCI, VFIO underscore IO MMU underscore type 1. And I'm going to force it since I already have them installed. So as soon as you force them, it's going to go ahead and go here for a moment and add the drivers to the NerdFS. Give it in a second here. It does take a moment, and then there we go. We'll run the command again just to make sure the drivers are loaded, which again we don't need to because as we already see, they are already loaded. Now finally, for unattended access, we need to install VNC. At least that's how I'm going to do it to manage my virtual machines. So I also need a desktop interface. So I'm going to install the group package XFCE desktop and Tiger VNC. Again, we're going back in time, so you'll see that's already installed. And I also want to show you how to enable this at start. So I'm just going to enable the VNC service here. There, okay. And you'll want to also enable one for your specific, I screwed up here. You need to specify a screen, so port number of your screen, by default, number 1 is the default port. I already have one running on 1, so I'm just going to do this one on 2. And as you can see, it runs. You can replace start with enable here to have a second screen session. I'm going to go ahead and stop this one because I already have it running on 1, as I'm going to show you here in just a second. So I'm going to stop on 2. And again, after you start it, just run a systemctl enable at VNC server :1, and that's going to turn it into a service that automatically starts when your computer starts. So you can, as soon as the machine boots up and hits multi-user target, you can get in and start access the remote desktop as soon as the system comes up. Just, well, remote desktop, I mean VNC into the machine. So there you go. See, it's running. Here we are in the VNC. Looks like a standard XFC desktop installation for Fedora. Virtual Machine Manager. You might not have this because I haven't installed that yet for you guys. So we're just going to open up a terminal here, and the command is just sudo dnf install @virtualization. The @ means it's a group package. It's going to pull down all the virtualization packages, and that includes Virtual Machine Manager and so forth. So of course it's going to say you want to install virtualization group. It's already done because it's already installed. And then I just come up and you'd go into your Virtual Machine Manager. Now we're running at the host level. We're doing root level virtual machine so you can pass through everything properly. So you have to enter in your sudo password here. See, my NAS box comes up at boot. But here's my Windows 10 virtual machine. This is what we had to do the extra work for. As you come down here, you see these 2 PCI pass-throughs. It's the NVIDIA card. That wouldn't have worked without the ACH patch kernel. This is how you add the hardware. You come down to the PCI section, and then you find the 2 NVIDIA ones. You need to add both of them, and that's it. That's pretty much it. It's this tutorial is a little light, and it's not as good and detailed as I'd like it to be, but this is more of like a somewhat high level, get it done, get it working. Again, I'll have notes in the description how it works. You'll see it come up here. It's not going to show the actual desktop here because I have it passed through to an actual display. So I also have like my web dev box here. You can set up all sorts of other stuff. I'll go over this in another video upcoming, explaining how I have my home lab set up, show some of the cool stuff I have. Web dev is where I do some just web development, and then my NAS box I pass through 2 USB devices, which are 2 external hard drives, so it can serve those over the network. Again, that's pretty much it. I know this isn't the best video I've ever done, and it's probably a sign of what's to come. So thank you for watching. See you soon.